I'm going to be passive-aggressive.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Passive-aggressive Seth is here. He's back. We're all good. We have some things to discuss, though, both about this team and about how we're going to present it to you. We're busy. We're glad that you're busy. Training camp's open. Welcome back. This is RGR Football. Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Ooh, sans glasses. How are you, Seth?
I am here.
A little perturbed, are you?
I'm flummoxed. I'm put out. I'm anxious. I'm chagrined, if you will. Should we just jump right to it?
1 second. Shout out to my friends over at Launchpad Brewing. Their 6th year in business. I told them I was going to shout them out, even though they're Broncos fans. I like those guys. So, yes, please tell me what is perplexing you.
So, here's the deal. By the way, Rogue Nation, good to see you. Thank you for being patient with me being out last week. You guys are awesome. Just for the kids, doing a little vacation Bible school stuff, which is like the most on-brand thing ever for me to be doing. So
I just wanted to close up for you. Don't be alarmed.
That's okay. I get more handsome every day. If I could just lose if I could just 10 pounds out of this.
Now you sound like a Mac Davis song. I love that.
So I appreciate you guys, you guys being patient and did it for the kids, had a blast, was ready for it to be done. So we talk about media sometimes on here because I think it's kind of fun to give people a little bit of insight. You've been working in sports media for years. I've been working in sports media for years. We took very different paths getting there, but we both kind of had to scrap and claw from the outside looking in. So NFL Game Pass, which most of you probably know what it is. It's a product the NFL creates where you can replay games, and they have a bunch of other extra stuff that I very rarely watch, to be perfectly honest. Like NFL Films type stuff. Some of it's great. Some of it I could live without. Whatever. The big thing is Coach's Film. All 22, right? Where it's zoomed out to where you can see the entire field. And then also like the Madden cam views, which is great for watching offensive and defensive line play. Mm-hmm. So basically, over the last couple of days, or like over the last week, Game Pass has been down. And you're like, oh, we're doing some work. We're going to a new season. And people were annoyed because it's like, why not do this in March or April or May or June or early July, perhaps? I don't know. What training camp just started. And so okay, fine. And then now Game Pass is back. They've given it a facelift in a bunch of ways that I actually dislike. That made it maybe look more like, ooh, what a cool website if you're just going to click on. They gave it a facelift as though the primary users of Game Pass are people that just want to watch the replay of the game. And I would postulate that is not the biggest user of Game Pass. Because the thing with Game Pass, the primary product there is all 22. It's really the only place you can get it for the most part. Well, it is unless you have some kind of insider connection, right? And basically what Game Pass has announced in an email to everyone is, we're going to add all these new shows and moments you love. They're going to be more accessible than ever. It's going to be great, blah, 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 blah. While we've taken the effort to improve core parts of your subscription, some features like play search, in which you can look up, if you search in Patrick Mahomes, week 17, or now last year, I suppose, week 16, complete passes, you get a list and you can click on each play. It's wonderful. It was fine the way it was. What the thing people complained about is that didn't work all the time. So you hire someone to fix that to where it always works. Instead, it's gone. And Coach's Film might not be available at the start of the season. If you're on Twitter, Ryan, feel free to jump in at any point.
No, because I just want to do one thing because Ben evidently is not going to be here long. Thank you, Ben. Thank you for the super chat. and he just wanted to say hello and met all of you guys.
Ben, always good to see you.
Ben, we'll address your question next. I promise you about Trey. But
let's do Trey Smith first because
okay.
I'll finish ranting.
Okay.
Here's the reality of the situation. I have a newsletter in which I write about the Chiefs. And while I can do some of what I do, some of it's opinion stuff, some of it is statistical analysis. But the best work that I do, the work that I can do that I feel differentiates me the most, is that I watch the film. And I chart snaps. The quarterback film reviews, I have charted every snap by a Chiefs quarterback since the first year of Alex Smith. That's like 8 years we're coming up on. And you can only do that. You can only chart whether a throw was accurate when you can see the field before the throw. Wide receivers, corners, safeties, linebackers, quarterbacks. You cannot gauge any of them nearly as well without Game Pass. And here's the thing. There are thousands of people, literally thousands of people who work in media that rely on that to do their job. Yeah, I'm one of them.
We both are.
Yeah, we both are. And the thing for, Ryan and myself, and the thing that I'm just so irate about, we'll see if it comes back. It is what it is. But it is just one of those things where if you're on Twitter, you've seen film analysts freaking out.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Because for Ryan, for you and me, we love this. It's fun. It's something we're very passionate about. But we both have day jobs.
Yep.
If the Chief of the North newsletter shut down tomorrow, I don't do that for the money. If I did, I wouldn't have kept open the 60% off coupon for a year and a month. You know what I mean? Yes, I do charge for it in order to justify the amount of time I spend on it to my wife, but she doesn't kill me. That it's like, well, wait, why are you writing like all this? Anyway, it's great, but I do it for fun for the most part and because we love it. Ryan, you do it. It's nice to make a little money doing it, but there are people out here, thousands of people who rely on this for their job, and the NFL is just like, and it's beyond frustrating, and it's an example of how, and I didn't say this on Times Ours because I don't want the Athletic to be associated with it. I'm just going to throw you under the bus.
Okay, great.
This is not the opinion of Ryan. My opinion is that this is exemplary of the way the NFL treats the people that cover it sometimes, where it's just, they assume because they have a great product that they can just do whatever the crap they want with it. And that is beyond frustrating. And it really sucks because like guys that do like YouTube stuff, I know you and Brett Coleman talk. This is his job.
Right. Yeah. And if you're outside the circle, it makes things difficult. Now I will be the ray of sunlight here for a minute. They have been kind because you cannot use broadcast, folks. We cannot show you broadcast. That is copyrighted. Mm-hmm. They have been kind enough to not make us stop using All 22 on YouTube.
That's true.
So that's a plus. And this is also a plus. We never get All 22 of the preseason, ever. They don't put out coaches' film on it. So we're not at a loss yet. We have until the second week of September until we all start to go, well, I guess we're just going to talk about stuff. So there is a little bit of time. But what Seth said is the key thing is things around here might have to change, certainly are going to change for all the other film analysts around, whether it's Seth on his Substack, whether it's the national writers. They'll always be Baldy because he's an insider at the NFL. That is not a publicly used process. And so things may change for a while here. My understanding is that they intend to get the system back up and running, hopefully in better, so that maybe search works better, or maybe there's some things. But if we don't have it for week 1, if we don't have it for week 4, we're still going to give you everything we can. We're just not going to be able to show it to you.
And I will continue to give everything that I can as well. It'll just be different. I won't be able to analyze the same things. Offensive and defensive line will become suddenly much more of a focus.
Oh, yes. Because folks, if you're like me and you want to know what the safeties are doing, without All 22, you don't know. There is no way to know. So they might show you an All 22 clip once or twice in a ball game's broadcast. You might get one play where you can say, well, that's what they were doing in coverage. But that's about it.
That's exactly right. And it allows you to do all sorts of things. Like when people talk about, so like when you have people that post broadcast 4-minute clips going, Patrick Mahomes is the luckiest quarterback in the NFL. I'm being really mature right now. A 36-year-old.
Well done.
He's the most lucky quarterback in the NFL. Look at all these potential picks. the all 22 is what you can look at to see where was the defender when the ball was thrown. What was the route? How do you figure out what exactly happened on a play, right? And so there's just so much value there. And the thing is, it makes people love football more.
It does.
I have had people, well, the best compliment I ever get is when people tell me that what I do makes them love football more, because the more I learn about the game, the more I love it. It's such a complex game. I think it's a beautiful sport. Everyone calls soccer a beautiful sport. I'm sure it is. I don't understand it. I'm sure it is. But football to me is genuinely beautiful. Like the setup of a screen, like what you retweeted, from practice, watching Humphrey and Trey Smith get into space, and you're like, I mean, it's fun watching how the levers over here pull the levers over there. And you can show that with all 22. So yeah, like you said, I'm going to do my best to provide content. You'll do your best to provide content. It'll still be great content. Well, yours will. Mine will be mediocre at best.
I won't be talking about Juan Thornhill as much. I'll tell you that. If I can't watch the tweets.
You're like, I bet Juan Thornhill was in beautiful coverage that play. I mean, you can't prove he wasn't. So
this channel would become all Sneed all the time.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's
Folks,
awesome.
I'm kidding. We'll do other things, I promise. But, for those of you that are concerned with this news or weren't even aware of it, don't worry. We're still going to do our stat breakdowns. We're going to still do all the things that we do. Maybe I'll just have to drag Seth on for more conversations. It'll be what it is.
Oh, we'll still have fun. We'll still be able to provide a lot because I'm still psychotic enough to rewatch the games 8 times.
Right.
And
that's why I have a DVR, right?
You learn more rewatching broadcasts too. It's just different. So we'll see NFL, for the love of God, do the right thing. I'm sure you're watching and care deeply.
I'm absolutely certain. I know there's at least one NFL team that watches from time to time. So hello. So let's get on to the big topics. Like I'm huge on what Chris Jones had to say today. That's why I put him on the cover. But this question from Ben, and Ben, I'm sorry, whatever your medical circumstances that you have to be gone tonight. I hope that you're doing better by tomorrow. So
I'll be praying for you, man.
And thank you for the support in the super chat, folks. If you want to support us, the super chat's the easy way to do it. So are the t-shirts over at the RGR store on Teespring. You can find those in the things and the stuff. But Trey Smith is his question, and Trey Smith was, I have to admit, a surprise for me to be in the starting lineup yesterday.
And in day 2, which is relevant.
It is.
That was the first thing I asked Nate when I was talking to him earlier was Trey Smith with the first team again? Because it's one thing to like, all right, we're going to alternate days, we're going to alternate reps, that kind of stuff. Right now, Trey Smith is the guy. 2 days in.
Yeah.
But it's not like they're like rotating him out. It's right now, he's earned that spot. And I did something I've never done on the Chief of the North before. I actually updated a earlier article, and I tweeted out about it when I wrote about Trey Smith. And the reason I did it that way is, for one, because it's the beautiful thing about having my own Substack is I don't have to be clickbaity. Like, I need more clicks for that. It's like, no, I can just do this. So when I wrote about Trey Smith, one of the things I wrote in the final paragraph about him, this was back in May, was his ceiling is sky high because he is very, very strong and pretty athletic for how strong he is with a mean streak. Like, it's just that combination of traits is hard to find. But he needs to work on his consistency. You and I talked about that a ton.
Yeah.
Just snap by snap, you did not know what you were going to get from him. Sometimes game by game, sometimes snap by snap. He would have games where he dominated top-level competition, and then he'd have games where he'd have a half dozen plays or more where you're like, just what's going on there? Mm-hmm. And so what I said was he needs to work on his consistency and his technique, which the one leads to the other, right? The latter leads to the former. That's why Joe Thuney looks like the same dude. After I got like 3 games into Joe Thuney's film, I was like, holy crap, this is boring. And not because I don't love good offensive line play. I do, but it looks exactly the same against everyone except Aaron Donald, where it looks like a man fighting a bear.
Yeah.
Because Aaron Donald is so good. Anyway, so the thing that was so cool was when Reed got asked specifically about Trey Smith being with the starting group, his answer was, well, he's earned that spot right now with consistency. And it's like,
Maybe not having to go to school and do all the other things that are distracting him. Maybe that's good for him. What an idea.
Yeah, what an idea. There's a larger conversation to be had there. Because from everything I've heard about him, he is a guy that takes school seriously. And look, I mean, college, depending on what you're doing, I mean, he always knew he was going to go pro, but you're still doing something else. Let's say minimum 15, 20 hours a week.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say that, no offense to Tennessee or anything else, they figured out his physical condition. And I think they had that, mostly scoped out by the time he got to the NFL. And then with the Chiefs training staff, that the reputation that they have, I know that they had that scoped out even better. And so it's probably his treatment is more consistent. His monitoring is more consistent. Everything in his life is more consistent.
Absolutely. And that's a big deal. And what's cool with the I can't remember what he called it, Jeff Schwartz's series, his awesome series he did on Fox.
Right.
Big Boys, Big something or other. Look it up. Jeff Schwartz, Fox, GEOFF. He did a whole thing about linemen, and both Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith were mentioned. And I'm really bad at giving. He pronounces it Jeff.
I know.
Oh, I thought you were like making. I was like, no, it's
just that you spelled it out. Good for you.
Just in case, because people got to Google it. I'm really bad at helping give my friends shout outs, apparently. The thing with the stuff. He talked with Trey Smith about some of the plays and stuff. He's a really smart player, and he's a really smart guy. And that's another thing that you don't often see with guys who are physical specimens. They don't always have to be guys that are like students of the game. Joseph Jackson, darn it all. Wearing black is easier than working out, okay? I just need to lose a few pounds, and then I'll get to be wearing red. I'm sorry. Anyway, we'll get to the other one. But it's just so encouraging to see Trey Smith get that spot right out of the gate, because Andy Reid does not hand things to rookies.
Nope.
He does not. Mike Remmers starting at right tackle. And we should talk about that a little bit, because I know that was part of the question as well. They're having Niang take backup left tackle snaps. Part of me wonders if what they're doing there is saying, okay, we know we don't want Mike being the backup left tackle. We want Niang to be our swing tackle. We know we like him at right tackle. We got to get him reps at left tackle, because that's all he played in college was right tackle. Yeah. But you see that it's not just hand to rookies. Nick Bolton didn't just come in automatically when Hitchens had a tweaked hamstring. Yeah. That's got to be earned. And if Trey Smith, even these first 2 days of camp, is in that spot, it's because he's shown them something that make them say these incredibly valuable reps, because they are valuable. They're valuable for LDT too. It's not like they're like, oh, LDT's fine. He hasn't been with the team for, a year and a half. Yeah. So them giving him these incredibly valuable reps say, we think he can start. We think he might get there. And so I think it's great news. And we are one player away from my best case scenario on the offensive line. Remember, I wrote about that on the Chief of the North newsletter. This idea that their best case scenario this year would be if Trey Smith and Lucas Niang, I love that bit, if they manage to seize those spots and earn them, that's the best case scenario for the Chiefs, because then they have a very young, very talented line where everyone but Orlando Brown, who is going to get signed for a long-term deal. I mean, everyone knows that, barring him playing disastrously bad this year, he's going to be around for a while. That means their line would all be under contract for the next 4 years. Yeah,
it's huge. And especially when you have Brown next to Tooney, who is going to give you your left side's taken care of. Now, back to Ben's question. Yes, he can squeeze himself in there, but he's got to prove it. Andy was very specific about, hey, let's wait till we get the pads on. Let's see what happens.
Yes.
LDT's still running in shape. He's had exactly 3 practices before camp in the last year and a half.
Yep.
So Kyle Long will supposedly be back, not for the beginning of camp. Like I told you guys, a couple of months. It's going to be the beginning of the season now. Might be a little bit longer. At 33 years old, it's hard to recover from things. But I will put it this way, as I think I said this on the Locked On episode that comes out tonight. I had it as they had 2 options at right guard and a rookie that was a maybe. Now they have 3 legitimate options at right guard. is what the way that I see it.
Absolutely. And, Kyle Long being injured is a bit of a bummer because it would be even bigger news if Long were healthy and Trey Smith were somehow seizing that from him as well.
Yeah.
It's very impressive, though. It's a cool thing to see. And it's the best news possible so far. Like you said, we're super early in the process. Let's see what happens, because you don't want to read too much into it, because then you got to figure out why Juan Thornhill is still the third safety.
I am not willing to say that there was a procedure done, but I think there was a setback at some point that they gave him some of OTAs off. They're obviously taking it easy on him now.
Mm-hmm.
I have faith that he's going to get there. I don't think it's a mental thing. I think it's a physical thing. And I hope that they are just guarding him for the future.
Oh, man, I hope so too. I am curious. I know, if we got to go straight to super chats, I get it.
We'll get there in a minute.
I'm curious your thoughts on Niang being backup left tackle.
I talked to his trainer, Brett Yaris, the guy that he works with the whole year he was off, and has since before then when he was at TCU. And Brett was very specific with me on everything that you guys saw. And we had a good conversation off camera as well, that they were trying to prepare him to be a lineman, that he was taking some drops to show that he was capable of it. No, he didn't do it. There's no film of him ever taking a drop from the left-hand side, but he's an athlete. And quite frankly, everyone blew up at OTAs when he came in, and he looks, honestly, the way he looked in college.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks thought he was out of shape. He's not. He's still agile. He still has good feet. He did even then, and he was built the same way. So he's still, 10 times the athlete Orlando is? Orlando's one of the worst performing offensive tackles in the history of my matrix. And he'll tell you, he even said it today. He's like, yeah, we're going to do some stuff on the screens. It ain't going to be me. And good for him for just being out there with it. But I think that it's important because, you want to get something out of that draft pick, but we have to remember Niang is basically a rookie. And so letting him grow into it, I think, honestly, getting him some left-hand snaps allows you that if Orlando has to ever miss a game, that it isn't disrupting two positions like we saw in the Super Bowl, and that it gives them another young player to get reps in there. In the meantime, I think he can battle with Mike Remmers.
Yeah.
And I think eventually during the season, it's still an option for Niang to overtake him and become the starter on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I don't think it cancels anything out.
Yeah. It's so the way you view it, it's a statement. It's not necessarily something that's indicative of just Mike Remmers or just Lucas Niang's work on the right side, or just the team's opinion on the situation on the left side. It's a smorgasbord of, as it were, of all of those things. And now that I've restated what you've said to be exactly my opinion, I agree with you completely.
Well done. I like that. Two things. Thank you, Odin's Child. I'm glad you like the beer channel. We have more coming for you on that too. My other podcast partner has been doing some stuff. So yes, Seth, I do pod about non-football issues things as well. So enjoy that. And folks, if you are one of the members, if you're at the starter level now, a lot of you are new, make sure that you send me an email, because you can't get into the Discord, which is members only, unless you contact me through email or IM on Twitter or Instagram. Seth, I want to give this to you because I'm going to change a camera battery here in a second. Back to Joseph's question. Thank you for the super chat, Joseph. We appreciate the support. What do you think of Chris Jones over under? And then I want to talk about his position.
Sure. I really like that question because I like talking about Chris Jones as one of my favorite Chiefs of all time, in part because of the way that he wins snaps. It is just, Chiefs fans have been spoiled with him because the way he wins is so dominant when it happens. His upper body strength, his hands are just so heavy. It's a cool thing to watch. I am going to take the over for Jones this season, which is 15 sacks. That's tough. That's a really tough thing to do, whether you're on the edge, whether you're on the interior, all that kind of thing. But the thing with Jones is he slimmed down yet again. Every training camp, Ryan, you and I have talked about this in the past. Every training camp, he's shown up a little bit skinnier.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I think Chris Jones has always been motivated. I think he's always been a guy who you don't improve like he's improved and become as technically proficient at rushing the passer without having an incredible drive in addition to all his natural talent. But I think this year, I took the over, by the way, Ryan.
Oh, okay.
And then I talked about it's hard to do.
Yeah, I'll
Because
take the under.
he could play at a totally elite level all year and get 9 sacks or 7. I mean, that's just how it goes.
Let me ask you this, though. If you're that optimistic, I'll take the under. 13 is the number that I have in my head. I think he can do that. 15 might be a little much for me. But how would you break it down between edge and tackle?
I'm going to take, let's say, well, I took over. So we're going to credit him with 15 and a half sacks. He is going to, if he does that, he's going to get 6.5 from the edge, 9 from the interior.
Okay. So playing back to his strength.
Yep. Playing, kind of a little bit of both. But I think he's going to be able to heap on some cheap ones from the edge.
Okay.
He's visibly slimmer yet again. And, I mean, the man's an athlete. I think you're going to see the most motivated Chris Jones of his entire career. The joke I made on Times Hours, because this is how we roll, is that this is his 8-mile moment. This is his one shot, his one opportunity to seize everything he's ever wanted, because that man has wanted to play defensive end since, like, his second year.
Yeah.
And now, do I think it's going to be full-time? Absolutely not. I think now that I see how slimmed down he is, now I'm like, well, maybe it's more of a 50-50 thing. Him talking about Jarran Reed being there. Look, Jarran Reed's a really good 3-tech. I mean, so it makes sense. And I'm curious what teams do when Reed and Jones rush next to each other, because people tend to overrate that occasionally. Like, oh, they can't double team both of them. That's true. But having 2 great pass rushers doesn't always work next to each other, because you want a great pass rusher to be able to go to either lane. And if you're,
and O-lines can slide one direction. You can boot the other. There are all kinds of things you can do to combat guys if they're together.
Right. And the thing with those particular 2 styles of winning, though, next to each other is in a pure power contest, I'll probably take those 2 against any 3 linemen.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just crushing the pocket.
Yeah.
So this is an excellent chance for him. I think he's going to get a genuine shot at this, rather than it being like, okay, fine, Chris, we'll put you out there because we have some injuries, and oh my gosh, just shut up about it. Like, that's what it's been in the past. Like, okay, fine, we'll try it here and there. This is going to be a legitimate opportunity for him to do it. I'm excited for him, and I think he's going to make the most of it. I think he's going to have a career year, which for him would be, I mean, an incredible season. I mean, he's been an all-pro level player multiple years in a row.
Well, 15 and a half is his career high, is it not?
Sure, why not? That was when he had like 10 in a row, 11 in a row. Didn't he break he broke the record for consecutive games with a sack?
I think he did, yeah. I'll let you look that up while I address this one. Cody, we can build a statue to Brett Veach, a couple more championships. Let's get there first. His job's not done. Brett Veach, as much as I like to tout what he does, I think he's very good. He's an excellent GM. Your job is never done as a GM.
Right.
You don't get an off season. I mean, as much as we talk about the NFL being a year-round league, there's no off season for the GM. Like right now, those guys are at camp watching their own players, going in, watching film from other teams around the league. When the preseason games start, all the pro scouts are going to be watching the other team's preseason games for cut downs to see who they want to pick up, who do they want in the practice squad. Nothing ever ends for them. And so it is going to be a marathon for Brett Veach. You can build a statue to him when we see what the results are a little bit farther down the road.
Yep.
Odin's Child, original. I appreciate that.
If I could do the Undertaker sit-up thing right now, I totally would.
I can't even remember any of that stuff. I'm too old for that. Aaron asked, did you guys record Locked On Chiefs face-to-face a few years and just upload the sound or whatever, or could you see each other? We did. You, me, Chris, and Nate, and Josh, actually, I think. We all sat around a table at camp 2 years ago.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we took the video and the sound off the video, and I don't think I barely started the YouTube channel back then, so you guys might have seen it, but I doubt it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. If I make it to camp, it will be August 9th.
Okay. I will miss you then.
Yes, and I have no idea if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just, work and the dates are kind of specific. And plus, from my understanding, in Kansas City, it's approximately 9 million degrees right now. And although I did see you guys have blue skies because of the wildfires in Canada and stuff, it looks like a post-apocalyptic dystopia outside. Like,
It's
just
been like that here too.
Oh, is it?
It's bad.
Yeah,
Although it's hailing right now. So
so it really is. It's like Revelation chapter 9 where you're at. It's just like So it's bad here. You go outside and it smells like a bonfire. But
yeah.
anyway, be that as it may, Jones's career high was 15 and a half in 2018, and he did break the league record all time for most consecutive games with a sack. And he's the type of guy who really builds on that kind of emotion, on that kind of motivation. Once the streak started, he played better and better and better. And I'm not saying Jones doesn't normally give it his all or anything like that, but he is the type of person that feeds off emotion and finds another gear.
Yeah.
There's something about emotion that helps him find that sixth gear. And not everyone can do that. Most people, this is their best. This is the most they can ever reach. There are players who can kick it up to an even higher level, and it's not always accessible. It's just not. Mahomes is one of them, where, third and long, he just turns on God mode at quarterback, where everything slows down even more. And Jones is one of them. And I think this year, he's got that motivation to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that comes from his personality too. Like one of the things, and I will say this, I don't mind him being light. He said he was trying to get back up to 295. That tells you something, folks. Chris has to try to keep weight on. He always has.
Yep.
But he said he had him as, what did he, I can't remember. I'm not going to name the establishment because I can't say for sure. It might have been, I can't remember. It's the one with the super chicken sandwich that everybody lost their mind about. Popeyes.
Yes.
But he said he'd go there and grab 18 million things to eat. And then he rolled into camp and he was still 292, which means naturally he's probably 288. So that's okay, because I think he needs a little bit lighter load in order to make that switch and be really productive out there at the edge. And so I'm all for that. But production is what Terrell's talking about. And he said it feels like linebacker group is one injury away from having depth issues. Should they try to add more help? What do you think?
I mean, I would have liked it if they added more depth or kept Damian Wilson around. I think one problem that you have, and this goes to the human element of things, let's say they had tried to keep Damian Wilson around, right? And I think Damian Wilson got himself a nice little contract somewhere else. And I appreciate what Wilson's brought to the team in the last few years. The problem with that is, with trying to keep him around, is he sees that they drafted Willie Gay Jr. last year. He sees that they drafted Nick Bolton this year. And he sees that they do like keeping Ben Neiman on the field. And so Damian Wilson's obvious question would be, wait, are you asking me to stay around to be a backup?
Right.
And that's harder to do with a starter from your team versus someone that you bring in. You want to know, reading between the lines, Le'Veon Bell, who just gets mad at everyone after he leaves the team, and that's fine. But in between the lines, he acted as though he was promised a bigger role than what he eventually had. And Bell, I mean, he doesn't have a filter, fine. But it does go to show the human element does actually matter here, to where something like that, it would have been nice to keep Wilson around. I'm guessing he probably wasn't willing to stick around, though, to be a bench rider and, maybe play special teams. I would have liked them to have one more body. Hitchens going down is the big thing. That would be problematic. Willie Gay Jr. going down, I think, would be problematic too. So the short answer is yes, because if you've got two different guys, you're like, oh, that'd be bad. That's not great at a position where you're normally playing two guys.
Yeah. And that's why you see Neiman's in there. He made the calls on day one. Evidently, Nick got in a little bit today at the mic. But yeah, when you're running a two linebacker set, Willie seems to have put some things together. Three people that I've talked to that have seen him moving think that he is way ahead of where he was in terms of processing last season. And that's kind of what I expected. I'm glad to see that come to fruition, but I don't think it's over. And if they were to lose anyone else right now, they've lost. This is the scenario that we were going to be dealing with in the season. They've lost their main guy in that hitches on the sidelines. I don't think they're in any rush to bring him back anytime soon for camp, because if this happens in the regular season, you're going to be in trouble. But this is what you'll see is Neiman and Bolton rotating with Gay. If they lose another one, then Terrell's absolutely right. This is a problematic thing. So you have KJ Wright out there, as I understand. I believe he's still out there. I think Hicks is still out there. I think are there some options? There's going to be some cut downs for veterans that I think you can bring in. I think this is going to be a post cut down addition for this team.
Mm-hmm. The several people I've talked to have said really big things about Willie Gay Jr. as well. And that's the thing for him is processing, not falling for fakes. He already, even last year, he looked natural and fluid in coverage.
Yeah.
But he couldn't, it just take him a half second longer to recognize stuff. And a half second can be fatal in the NFL. Now, because he's so athletic, it wasn't always for him.
Right.
But I mean, a half second, I mean, that's an eternity in the NFL, especially in coverage. I mean, think of how far Tyreek Hill runs in 0.5 seconds. And if that's your zone, like you're done with. Yep. Good luck. But he's looking good. That's going to be a very, very positive development. Someone framed it this way. There's a lot of talk about linebackers' importance with Fred Warner's contract, which, raised a big hubbub because apparently we can add linebacker to the list of players that you should never pay, along with running backs, individual offensive linemen, individual interior defensive linemen, safeties, obviously punters, kickers. I think you only pay quarterbacks. No, not corners anymore either, because secondary is the sum of the parts. So I think you only pay quarterbacks is how you win in the NFL. Yeah. That's such a straw, man. That's totally unfair. But you know what? Whatever. When in Rome.
I tried to stay with you there and keep a straight face.
They took Game Pass from me. I'm irritable.
Evidently.
And so there was a lot of discourse on why signing Warner might not be a good idea, how it's not too hard to find like average linebacker play and how that doesn't move the needle all that much. One thing that can alter your defense schematically is having a guy who is good in coverage, genuinely good with range, who also is good with range against the run. Mm-hmm. That can alter where you need guys to be in coverage and some of the games that you can play. And if Willie Gay can provide that this year, that's a big, 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 big deal for the Chiefs.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this too, the margin between a good player and a great player at the linebacker level is a margin that is narrowing down for me. As someone who watches linebackers a lot, that's what I see it as. But we got on that. Go ahead.
That makes complete sense. The difference between good and great, like you said, that margin narrows. It's where, the skill set is what matters. And then like what you can do, right? That sets you apart. You got to be able to do those things that are different. And Gay has potential to be that kind of guy. I mean, man, he can just move. But I mean, you make a really good point there in terms of the good versus great. And then so the idea there is, in a perfect world, you get someone who's good, because the difference between good and average is much more noticeable. That margin isn't as thin there.
Exactly. And then you're not paying through the nose for it. So that's a plus. Terrell, thank you for that one. Or correct me, hit me in the comments if it's supposed to be Terrell. I'm sorry if I mispronounced names. Is it okay? I'm if you say so.
Terrell. Man, I hope I'm right, because I said that with a lot of confidence.
You did. It's like your pals.
I've known that dude for years.
Okay, good.
He's an old high school buddy of mine. Sorry to insult you, Terrell. I'm sure you're younger than I am.
Zulu, when Snead, Gay, and Thornhill start clicking, it will definitely make a difference, because that gives you enough of a variety of where they are depth on the field. That's going to be important. Dave, I'm glad you like the Noah Gray breakdown. At least I'll have a tape break. There's one that I got for this season. We'll see what happens with the rest of them. I know we have some super chats we need to get to, folks. I'm not trying to skip over any other questions about Orlando. I know he's on the cover or the thumbnail of the franchise. I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I'm going to get to that. But any news on Kyle Long or the recovery? Now they're saying it's the first week of the regular season when we'll see him, Scott. So other than that, I can't tell you anything closer.
They always expected him to miss most of training camp, and so, but it feels like he got kicked back a little bit.
Yeah. Recovery. We don't even know what the injury is yet. They haven't released that. So I want to know, is it a partial Achilles? Is it something in the knee? Like, that is going to have a severe effect on what that timeline becomes. And until they tell me, I won't be able to tell you guys. So Odin's Child, thank you. He is an old school fan. I like that. Obviously, a lot more so than me. So well done. Dre 303, let me know if you made it to that BQ joint down there in Park Meadows. Do you think Tyrann will do enough to make it to Canton? Whew. That is a great question. I mean, he's been all pro now, what, 3 times? Twice with the Chiefs?
Let me look this up.
Was it 1 time? I thought so, but
because he's one of those guys that has. So yep, he has been a first-team All-Pro both years with the Chiefs. That's a big deal.
Yeah, was he not before? I thought he had one other year.
He had one other year, 2015 with the Cardinals. So I would say this, because of the way things were with the Cardinals in terms of some injuries. And then he kind of, people started whispering that maybe he was overrated, which I don't think was necessarily fair. He's also one of those unusual players, and he's admitted this, that has had to change the way he plays the game mid-career. And he's admitted this. He said because of injury, he is not quite the athletic freak that he used to. He's still a very good athlete for safety, but he used to be like, you watch him at LSU in his first few years in the league. It was like, it was unbelievable the way he moved.
Yeah.
And that's not quite as much there anymore. So now he's got to make his living being a good athlete. And he has. And he's excellent. I would say this, though, 3 All-Pros, probably going to need at least 2 more, is my guess.
Yeah.
I mean, he made the all-decade team. That matters. He's a Super Bowl champion. That matters. But you're going to need a few more Pro Bowls. And by the way, this is why Pro Bowls, every time, like, people get really fired up, and then there's a backlash against the backlash. Like, oh, it's just a Pro Bowl. Who cares? Well, it matters when they're doing, because the Pro Bowl voters missed out on Jamal Charles on 2 different years where he really should have made it.
Yeah.
That affects his Hall of Fame.
It does. Because, and you guys, Therese used to tell you, those things matter. They don't matter as much as All-Pros. All-Pros count a lot more. But that decade team, Therese will tell you that matters.
Yep. And so it does make a difference. Similarly to grabbing all juice.
Go get it.
That's awesome.
Go get it, you guys. I'll show you where.
And yeah, that's for an awesome cause.
That's the actual fun. Support that. That's what's going to get you the next Res Baylor writing and talking for you. That's what it's for.
Absolutely. So I think I could see him making it, but he's going to need a couple more years because he had just kind of a few years where it was a little bit kind of lost years for him in a sense, to where he just kind of slipped out of the discourse a little bit.
There was a serious injury there too. So I'm glad to see that he recovered. So
yeah,
I do think that he can make it. If he were, he's not going to have another shot unless he does something remarkable in the next 3 seasons, like back-to-back All-Pros. He's not going to make the next decade team. You make 2 decade teams, you're in. I'll tell you that right now, without a doubt.
Yep, absolutely.
Aaron, we used to record. Chris and I have always recorded remotely. Seth and I have, except for one occasion, we've always recorded remotely as well. So it's interesting. It's a new age, Well,
yeah, we didn't meet face to face until we'd been recording together for a while.
Yeah, and that was just. Just don't wear it on Thursdays, man.
I worn my other stuff. I only have I'm not that kind of lawyer where I got 40 shirts. I got 9 shirts in circulation with different ties, and I'm a little sensitive about some of the weight I put on, and black is easier. I'm sorry. I got a red tie that I could wear with this, and that would make it better.
Yes, it's perfectly fine. But he does ask a good question about the red zone.
Yep.
And I do think that this line is more capable of getting tough yards than any previous line the Chiefs have had under Andy Reid, and specifically last year's line, because you can make an argument the Reader was passable in pass blocking. You cannot tell me he was a good run blocker and that they got any kind of push and they got any kind of point of attack power from Austin Ryder. Right. So this is going to be a dramatic difference.
It should
because
be. Yep, on
Creed
paper.
Humphrey can wrestle cows. You know what I'm saying? Like he can get that done. I do think this is going to be dramatic. Not necessarily efficiency. I'm glad that you put it that way, Joseph, because it may not be huge yards. You're not supposed to in short yardage situations. The question is, you hand off the ball, do you get the 2 yards that you need? Get a first down, get in the end zone, whatever it is.
And Clyde generally took all the yards that were available to him and then some. And that was a problem. Last year's run blocking was as bad as it's been in the Reed era.
Yes, absolutely.
It was just poor across the board, and it got worse after about week 4. There were just problems. So I think in theory that should help him. You know, one thing everyone talks about red zone success, the one thing to keep in mind, red zone plays account for such a small fraction of plays, which are already a pretty small number, that luck plays a bit of a role there too. But the ability to run some gap or power type stuff in the red zone becomes more important, because some of that zone stuff, you know, as you are, you know, you're pulling from different directions and you're trying to block a spot, that just doesn't always work as well in the red zone where guys are just firing off the ball. That makes it a little bit tougher. So I think it should help. I think it's good that they're being very intentional about getting him involved, because I think that's important. He's clearly talented. Yes. And they need to make sure to incorporate that talent. Even in the Super Bowl, which we've talked about this before, he had a few carries where that, and I know you and I've talked about this, where it's like, man, maybe a couple more draws might not be a terrible idea. See if we can get that pass rush to chill, because he belonged out there. And
and think about it this way, folks. In the zone run game, any penetration is death to that play. In the gap and the power scheme, sometimes you want that penetration. That opens up the angles, that opens up the traps. I mean, the counter game alone, I would have run 5 times a game last season because it's just successful.
Yep. So, and I'm not sure, and I'm really not sure they could with the type of run blocking they had from the interior part of the line last year.
I'll tell you who the beneficiary is, though. It's Clyde. It's also Darryl, though. I think Darryl runs better behind more power blocking.
I agree with that.
So I just wanted to hear him say it, folks. I had to get something in there. Miss Holly, thank you. I appreciate you testing out the super chat button. We appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are maintaining YouTube's presence, that they can do this. Aim straight. I don't think either of us are worried about the QB3 yet, because Matt Moore's still sitting on the couch at home. He'll be fine when they re-sign him. What else? Let's see. Owens Child. Jones aiming for 23. I will come up with an IPA for you. I guarantee it. I'll even share the recipe with you guys who do brew at home or want to. And if you do want to learn to make beer at home, check out my other channel, RGR Craft. Which injury besides Mahomes would be catastrophic to this team? So Chris Jones and the pass rush, or Snead for coverage? Woo!
I think a Chris Jones injury, unless Jarran Reed is like, because Jarran Reed was good last year, but his best 2 years were the 2 years prior to that. Unless Jarran Reed comes in and plays at a Pro Bowl level, I think Chris Jones being hurt would be catastrophic for the team. I think fans have really started to take for granted how often he makes things difficult on opposing quarterbacks.
True. I think they could still limp through and win a few games, maybe go 500 without him. I think Spags is creative with what he does.
Yeah,
it would fall to him to make up for that.
Yeah, and the offense will always be the driver. Like Chris Jones could get hurt early and they could still win 13 games. Yeah. But, man, things are going to get tougher, much, much, much tougher against great offenses and quarterbacks. You're going to see a lot more of an ability to go shot for shot with Mahomes, because Chris Jones is a big reason why quarterbacks have trouble doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, thank you for bringing this up. We were going to get to it eventually. Snead being double duty. Being the slider now, starting outside, going inside in the nickel. Don't worry about Hughes. Don't worry about Baker, and certainly don't worry about Fenton. Fenton's still the third best corner on this team right now. I think they're trying to give those two guys a chance to try to catch up, see what they have. They know what Fenton can do. There's actually an image that somebody took today of Fenton standing on the sidelines with Spags' arm around him as they watched the other guys play. I don't think there's anything to worry about for Fenton.
And that's, with Fenton, I'm happy to have him. I think they've given him plenty of snaps in the past. I think they want to see what they have in Hughes. And it's worth noting. I mean, Hughes and Baker have talent. There's a reason they were drafted where they were. And they're both in a situation right now. This is one of the advantages to grabbing guys that are kind of on the downslope, like what Brett Veach does. I think both Baker and Hughes have had a chance now. Baker after just one catastrophic year in the league, and Hughes after a couple tough years, after a promising rookie year. I think they've seen how fast you can slide. Mm-hmm. And there's something to be said like, holy crap, I see how fast all this can start to get taken away from me. So, I mean, if they're going to succeed anywhere, they're going to succeed here in a system that is friendly to corners and doesn't ask them to do more than what they can do. I just think they really need to see what they have in one of them, because otherwise, I mean, again, you've got 3 corners you're comfortable with, and man, you need 4 at least.
You got to have 4 just for injury. You got to have 4 sometimes because they're going to be teams like the Raiders. They're going to be teams like the Bills. They're going to try to go 4 wide on them to try to take away some of their strengths. And so you need to be able to man up on them, I think. I hope that Spags will do that. We'll see if he has the horses to get it done. Holly, thank you very much. Watch the Noah Gray breakdown, and no, he's not Kelsey Jr. What do you think the biggest gap between Kelsey and Gray is as far as what Gray brings to the team? You go ahead, Seth.
Nate is over the moon for Noah Gray through 2 days of camp.
Yep.
Like, and this was in OTAs as well. And so Nate has a running joke where it's like, you know, during the draft process, guys look like beautiful stallions riding down the beach. And then the season starts and they get a little closer. And it turns out they're like a midget pony or a donkey. And he tweeted out today, through 2 days of training camp, Noah Gray is still a beautiful stallion, which I'm sure for a lot of people who like don't listen to Times Ours were like, the crap is Taylor talking about?
Yeah, I think I retweeted and said, I think it's too hot out there for Nate. He's seeing things.
But I mean, he is thrilled with what Gray has shown so far. And you and I talked about Gray a ton. I wrote about him. He is not as explosive as Kelsey was coming out of Cincinnati. Very few are. But he's got some explosion. And he's got a little more acceleration than you'd think. And he's very bendy in his routes. He's very slick. And the material is there to run some of the kind of nifty routes that Kelsey runs.
I agree with you. I think he's got a long way to go in his route running. When he does need to cut dramatically and not bend them, I think he's got some work to do there. But for me, it's that he's comfortable with the guy on his back. He doesn't have the speed to break away from people, but he moves well laterally. He can get loose on cuts. And once he trims those up and tightens up those changes of direction, I think he's going to be really useful as a complement, not a replacement to Travis Kelce.
Right. And people need to understand that, like, you know, before that last question or 2 questions ago asked, what's the most catastrophic injury the Chiefs could have? I think it's, besides Mahomes, I think it's Travis Kelce. Yeah. Because Mahomes has played 1 game in his career without Travis Kelce. Yeah. And Kelce is always open. He's so good. One day he will be in the conversation of greatest tight ends to ever play. And I think he already should be, frankly. But the way he wins, if he stays healthy, that should age so well. But I mean, that would be catastrophic. So this is all to talk about Noah Gray. You can't count on him to replace Kelce. Yeah. Your best case scenario, say with even a guy like Gray, let's say Gray works out perfectly. Your best case scenario, barring something of miracle proportions, like genuine miracle, is he could step in and provide 80% of what Kelce does as a receiver. That would be like, holy crap, amazing.
Yeah,
because it would allow the offense to not totally alter its approach.
Exactly. I mean, they'll have to change, I think, the length of some of those routes.
Yeah.
But particularly the drags and the lower crossers. And by lower, I mean 8 to 18 yards instead of Kelsey's 12 to 25. I think that shortens that portion in the middle, but I think he can do it. And quite frankly, that's why there's still a case for Jody Fortson. If Jody Fortson can become a better receiver than Blake Bell is a blocker, then he's a guy that could then become a second and gives you another passing option. Because if it comes down to Kelce missing games, Noah is the tight end passing option. I don't think Blake Bell can do that. He doesn't have the athletic ability to get loose.
And you can see a difference in the way Gray moves and cuts versus other guys they've tried to come in there and do things as their tight end too. But I mean, he's also he's built a little bit different than those guys too. So I'm really curious if the role is just a tad different. Yeah. If you see fewer inline type stuff.
Brandon, good question. It would be a fantasy thing if you're doing an all-time team. Jones and Donald together is probably the best interior pair. I mean, it goes back to the Monsters of the Midway for me, like McMichael and Hampton inside with Richard Dent outside. I mean, that was.
Yeah. Well, Donald is another 2 years from being in the running for for the greatest defensive player to ever play. I understand it's going to be hard to pass Reggie White.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got to deal with, there's a few guys there that are really tough to unseat. Reggie White to me is probably the greatest defensive player to ever live.
Yeah.
Now I
won't argue with you.
I know we're talking about Chiefs. I think Derek Thomas is like right up there, top 10 ever, top 5 maybe. Reggie White was just from another friggin' planet.
Reggie White stands alone still, even with Aaron Donald in the picture. I think Donald can catch him. But
Donald would have to do what he's doing for another 8 years.
8, maybe. Okay, fair enough. In perception, for me, 4 or 5 would probably do it, just in terms of dominance.
Yes.
But yeah, Derek and Lawrence Taylor are the best 2 outside linebackers to ever play the game, period.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the level we're talking about.
Right. And so, but yeah, with Jones, and because Jones is one of the, if it weren't for, and who wrote this? I can't remember. Maybe it was Doug Farrar. I can't remember. Someone wrote, and either way, shout out to Doug. Someone wrote that if it weren't for Aaron Donald's existence, this would be Chris Jones's league, like as an interior, because other guys are maybe as all around good. Like DeForest Buckner is great. He's a great player. But as far as just rushing the passer goes, there's Donald, and then there's like Jones, and then everyone else interior rushers. Yeah. It's a crazy gap. And he's so great at it. And so the two of them together, like you said, it's a fantasy. But it's the same fantasy that, like, you remember in 2014 when Justin Houston was at his absolute peak. Those were like thinking, like, man, what would Justin Houston and Von Miller look like, lined up? But only more so, honestly. It'd be like having, like you said, a Derek Thomas and Lawrence Taylor,
Or those 3 days when Tyrann was in town and they still had Barry on the roster.
I know.
You thought he could come back, right?
Maybe. Man, there's another guy. Man, Barry was great.
Tyrann and Ronnie Lott. Okay, you guys are going to get me thinking now. Brett, I'm going to hit your question real quick. Hardman is not an X receiver. He doesn't have to push for that. He's going to be a slot. It's the other guys that are pushing for the X. The only way that he would ever line up at the X is if they're running double tight with only 2 wide receivers and they want to get him. But most likely Tyreek will take the X and get on the line and leave Hardman that space. That's key for him. There's a couple other questions, folks, but I want to get all the super chatters in before we're done. Patrick, you're not going to see Frank Clark until his legal trouble is done. They're not going to put him on a presser. They're not going to feature him in social media. There's a cloud over him at this point. And actually, I think that's okay. I think Frank needs to focus on what he's doing on the field.
Yes.
Brett, we don't know. We think it's a 3-way push. You must have missed earlier. We talked a lot about that. Go back and watch it on replay. Gold Tau. I wanted to say Golden. Who would you rather see, or how would you rather build the future teams? Give Pat top 5 defense each year, or give him top 5 offensive weapons?
Top 5 offensive weapons. The reason being, it's impossible to have a top 5 defense every year. Like now, if it's an imaginary scenario in which we say it's a guaranteed top 5 defense every year, I'd maybe consider it, because I think the existence of Mahomes with an average offense around him creates a top 10 offense.
Yeah, it lifts everyone.
But the reality of the situation is it's impossible to be a top 5 defense each and every year for more than a couple years in a row. The Legion of Boom held on longer than most. But for the most part, you get 2 or 3 years of absolute dominance at best. I mean, remember, 2 or 3 years ago, the Bears had a dominant defense, and then it slips for a few years.
The Ravens it's just hard before to do. That, yeah.
Yep. And the modern NFL, it's better to have a great offense. And so I would rather see them, I was just saying, when people were talking about like Allen Robinson, I was like, fine, get Allen Robinson, figure it out later. Who cares? Trade for Julio. Like, that's one reason, because with Mahomes, you always have that ability to, your ceiling as an offense is virtually unlimited, and you're always going to have a ceiling on the defense that you just don't have with Mahomes as your quarterback on offense. Like your ceiling is 45 points a game.
And the alternative, guys, is if you don't continue to give him weapons, and I do agree with you, Seth, I would prioritize that first, and that's coming from somebody who lives for the defensive side of the ball.
Yes.
If you don't do that, you end up being Aaron Rodgers, who's won 1 Super Bowl and has had solid defenses to support him and has not had the weapons to get it done.
Mm-hmm. And when they were doing video game type stuff was when they were they had a real good run with drafting. And because there was 1 year, that 2011 year, Rodgers played like a machine. He was unbelievable. But I mean, his receivers that year were absurd.
Yeah.
And had they kept surrounding him with that, I think you would have seen a lot more stuff like what you saw in 2020, where he was on Mahomes' level.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. I think you can build an average defense a little bit easier. Like it's almost impossible to have an elite defense every year. Well, not almost impossible. It's impossible. No one does it.
And if you do, you have to be a run first team on the other side because you can't afford a quarterback.
Yep.
That's the way that it goes.
Yep.
I mean, look who won those Super Bowls with the Ravens. Can you tell me? Right?
Exactly. Well, and it's worth noting also the number of players you need to maintain. Like you said, you can't afford to play a quarterback because really to have an elite defense, you need at least 5 elite defenders.
Yeah.
And then you need the rest of them to be solid, at least. And solid players are not cheap in the NFL. That's one of the reasons why with like salary cap arguments and stuff, people always make this argument like, well, you could pay one great player $20 million a year or 2 good players $10 million. It's like, that's not how it works. Those 2 good players are going to make 19.
Right.
Because there's this assumption of availability of cheap good players, and that's very rare.
And it only emphasizes the draft that much more because that's the only way that you can get it done.
Absolutely.
Daryl, thank you. Dre, I hope you enjoy that and have a good trip home to Kansas City. I'm going to make one later in the summer too. Holly, small donation for Seth's business attire. Welcome. Thank you. We appreciate that. Ben, thank you. As always, you guys, I'm going to try to catch up on all the super chats here, and then we'll try to wrap up here before the end. If you guys haven't watched the franchise first episode, go watch that again. They do a great job at Chiefs Media. I really like that they produce those series. Not every team does, guys. We do get a lot of extra content.
Yeah, that is really cool. One of my favorite things every week, just on a side note, is watching you panic at the end and try to get to every super chat. And not that I'm telling our lovely watchers right now that they could throw you into a complete tizzy by chucking a couple more out there. Dude, do a super chat about Jamal Charles so I talk a lot. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
Killing me. Oh, my Lord. Dre, Willie will not be. Willie is a Mustang. He needs to run. He cannot be saddled with calling the defense.
Yeah, let's leave that to dudes like Hitchens and then later Nick Bolton. Bolton, man, I think there's some potential there. I think he's gonna do some stuff. We'll see.
We'll see. It's a transition.
A step faster Anthony Hitchens is a really, really good player.
Yes.
Because Anthony Hitchens he came around last year, so I'm excited.
Jerry, I don't think there's any way that you can do a Xavier for Clark trade, even if you put in extra picks. I don't think that's going to fit. I could be wrong. I just don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to give up. I mean, because of Clark's contract right now and the fact that he was average last year, he's virtually untradeable unless it was like a salary dump type thing.
Yeah. Judge, I appreciate you, and I'm sure the counselor would like to have a conversation at some point about legal terms.
I would love to know what's going on with Juan Thornhill. I have a theory. I think the Chiefs defensive coaches really value how guys do in practice and how they do in the meetings, and I would be willing to bet you my life that Ben Neiman and Dan Sorensen are awesome in meetings and in practice.
Yeah.
And I just think you see that every day, and you got a guy who hasn't gotten a question wrong in the fill room in 6 months. I think it's hard to move away from that. They love Sorensen, and I like Dan Sorensen. There's such a clear difference between him and Juan Thornhill in terms of skill set. I think Thornhill complements the rest of the defense better, but we'll see.
I don't think it's a performance issue at all. I think they're trying to avoid happening to Juan what has happened to Hitch. It feels like the way that they did the same thing where he was like Fenton was today, hanging out with Spags, going over all the mental aspects of it. It feels like they're trying to baby that knee a little bit. He says he's 100%, but he's got to play 20 games. If everything goes to plan, they have 20 games to play. And so if they give him some time off now, I think that that's going to be okay. And so that's my thought.
Absolutely.
It's a nice round number now, right?
Yeah.
But Judge, it is a question. Like they're doing to get looks at other guys like Hughes and Baker. I think they might be doing the same thing with Devin Key. I haven't heard anything about Will Parks playing with the ones, and he got time with the ones in OTAs. I expect that to come back too. We're just a couple days in, you guys. It will shift around, and I think we'll be okay in the end. Aaron, I don't know where it is. Evidently, Tyrann's not too worried about it, if you believe him.
If Tyrann's not worried about it, I'm not worried about it.
Right. I thought it'd be done by now. So I clearly was wrong about that. I mean, I haven't been that wrong on a contract since Travis Kelce's first extension. So, hey, sometimes I call things just to make them happen. Aaron, you are the Godfather. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We got Holly's, we got Ben's. Okay. Super Bowl predictions, Chiefs versus Packers. Oof.
I think it's going to be Chiefs Bucks again.
I do too.
And I want that so badly because the only way, not the only way, but the easiest way for Mahomes to have that shot at the GOAT legacy is, especially now after losing, is he's got to take it. And because then you can have a conversation like, yeah, but remember the next year when Mahomes came and hung 40 on that defense and then you can have a conversation there. But I want that bad. Plus, man, the Bucs had a lot to say about the Chiefs.
They do. And they all seem to forget that, hey, if they had an actual starting offensive line, all that pretty BS that they did wouldn't have worked because I know you guys can't go watch it, but I'll tell you, if you go rewatch the Super Bowl on all 22, you see people running free and open. If there's time, it's a completely different game. I'm not even going to get into that.
We're right. Well, and then you had people that looked at the film that were claiming Mahomes was leaving stuff on the table. You get screenshots of just the secondary. It's like, look, that guy's open. It's like, okay, but Mahomes' back is turned because he's running from Jason Pierre-Paul, a massive human. And even Mahomes can't do so much. And they still drop passes, man. It makes me crazy. Yeah. But that's neither here.
And one other thing, I got to say this just out loud. This whole everyone hyping up that they brought everyone back and they've run it back. Well, that's what the Chiefs did the year before too. So don't give me that this is some, great concept. Jason Light, good job. You thought exactly what Brett Veach did. I'm over it. Apologies. So we both think it's the Bucs Chiefs. Malik, thank you for your support. Can we expect Chris Jones to be as effective as Michael Bennett in his new role? Ooh, that's a tall order.
Very different types of players. But that's an interesting – this sounds terrible because he's a great player. I forgot about Michael Bennett as a guy who was genuinely both.
Mm-hmm.
Most guys, you got a guy moonlighting is one, mostly the other. Right. Michael Bennett was both.
Yeah.
And now, to be fair, Jones has about 20 pounds on Bennett. Well, yeah. Bennett was a big dude.
He was a 272 kind of guy.
Was he? He was about 270. So, I mean, if Jones he's saying he wants to play at like 290, 295.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. And boy, I mean, that would be terrific. It would affect the game in a number of ways. And Bennett, I mean, his teams were able to use that very effectively because it does mess with people when you don't know where someone's going to be.
Yeah, his last profile said 274. So that is quite a stark difference.
Yes.
Let's see. What else do we have? Thank you, Malik. Appreciate it. You guys, thank you for not bum rushing me and listening to him. I appreciate that. What's up, Julian? How are you? You guys, one more shout out. If you're a member or you have an invite out there, Ben Brutback, Julian, Avery, you guys all have existing emails. They kind of expire, so I had to send out a new link. Starters, the Discord is open for you. You just got to contact me or follow those links that you should have in some of your emails. We want to get as many folks in there as we can. We're going down the tiers as we get everyone into it. But hope you're doing well, Julian. I appreciate that. If you guys would like and sub and do all those things, if you're here an hour and 10 minutes in it and you're not already subbed to this channel, I don't know what else I can offer you, but just say, please click that little sub button.
Yeah, if you're sticking around this long, I mean, you might as well.
Right? Hey, it is what it is. What do you have planned this week for the Substack?
Well, something different than what I had planned. My plan was to write about the Young Guns series and continue that.
Mm-hmm.
Without the All-22, it's going to be a little different. So instead, I'm going to do some write-ups on what's going on in training camp so far and a few things that I'm going to be looking forward to in the season. See what I can find utilizing offensive and defensive line stuff. And hopefully the NFL says, hey, here's All-22.
Welcome back. We'll hold our breath. We'll have film for you guys. Seth will have film on the Substack.
Yes.
We'll keep doing this, though, because even if we can't give you film for you to view, we will view everything that we can and break it down for you so that you have another opinion.
We do that so you don't have to.
Exactly. That's why we're here. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for this night. And Seth, thanks for, changing the tie next week, we'll hope, but thanks for being here tonight.
I'm sure I will remember it. As Stevie said, I just need to be more intentional.
Folks, this is Chief in the North with Seth Kaiser. I'm just the guy running the doodads and whatever. So thank you for hanging out with us. We're going to take a couple of days. I might throw a couple of things up on the channel as we get some news from camp, and we'll be back roaring with our normal stuff as always. So thank you for tonight. Take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you next time.